start off by talking about the film, the three of you, how your backgrounds, how you all kind of got together. And then I'd love to jump into talking about the themes and the story and the inspiration behind Norman itself. And then I mean, there is an equally epic story behind how this film was made and how long it took and the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, which I'd love to. I think people would be really interested in. And then hopefully we've got the chat window open. If there are folks out there that have questions that they can throw your way, we'll hit you with some audience questions too, which should be fun. So let's just kind of start off with your own stories. Joel, you are a first-time director here, and I'm curious, how did the idea of Norman first come about in the first place?
Like the story or the production. I mean, to sum it all up, I mean, Norman, it came about from just wanting to make films. I mean, making a lot of short films with my brothers. You know, you had a VHS camera. I'd film birthdays for my aunts and uncles and stuff for their kids, and then in exchange I'd be able to use it and like record little Star Wars videos with action figures or things like that. And so like just naturally you'd kind of do more of it. You know what I mean? I just found the idea of like storytelling a lot of fun. As a kid, I always found that it was like a way I could say what I wanted to say and do it better than the way I would maybe say it. And so people would take me seriously that way, because it's just kind of a unique experience that when you make a movie, you can tell someone the same concept in person, but then when you show in the film, suddenly it's like bigger, you know, and it's just like, you know. So I think the idea of making a film and putting together a story on screen and using motion and music and everything together is just like I have to do it. To make films like this or to do anything like that, especially with pretty much nothing, you have to like love it. You have to do it for yourself more than anyone else. But Norman, like the story came about just from work, like hanging out with friends. I would tinker around with ideas. I've always liked the idea of time travel to just cause like predicaments and stuff. And it originally came from a couple different like little examples, but one of them was from a table. I was at a friend's house and there was a table and one of the legs was like 5 inches too short. And so it wouldn't hit the ground. And so they had a couple blocks underneath it. And I wrote down in a note, and the idea that kind of came eventually that became Norman was this idea of Norman is sitting at this table, right? And he's got a cup of coffee. And to balance out the table, he's got books underneath this table, right? That's the one of the legs is too short, but he wants to read the book. So he pulls the book out to read it, slides his mug over to even out the table. And then when he's done, he slides it back and puts it on the table. But the idea and the concept of that is just, it surrounded a character where he's someone who doesn't completely fix things. He's a temporary fixer. And so the idea of Norman in a time travel movie where the concept is not to go back and like kill Hitler and save the world kind of thing. It was, what if you used it for more selfish reasons, you know, like just life problems. You want to get away, you want to escape, you know, like I'm just going to, you know, grab my backpack and leave kind of thing. But it's like, you know, you're taking it all with you. And so his character slowly realizes that. And so I just like that idea of that no matter what he does in the past, he didn't change anything. He was already born into a world that he had already changed. He just didn't know it. And so that was kind of our twist in time travel. And I just like, I liked it. That was a movie I wanted to see. And so like, I had to make it like, so it was just like, that's how it gets to the point where I'm like, I don't write a lot of notes or especially around ideas. Cause if it's really good, it's just going to stick. So I don't have to like fight for it. I just kind of like, if I'm still thinking about it, you know, months from now, years from now, it's something I really want to do. So.
And of course you can't have Norman without a Norman. So Stephen, tell me a little bit about your background. You're Southern California kid, right?
Yeah. I grew up in Southern California. Gosh, I can't even remember when so just to touch back a little bit, Star Wars kid through and through. You're all done with that? So, by the way, this is my daughter. I'm watching her.
We are
her
too.
name's Clara. Yeah, we're all watching her together. But yeah, I grew up just reenacting Star Wars in the front and backyards and all around the block, and so I probably share that with, well, the newer Star Wars, and then I got into the older Star Wars. But anyways, I just grew up loving to pretend, and that followed me through high school. I was doing theater, just plays, and ended up wanting to do a theater major, which morphed into a few different things. But cinematography theater majors is kind of where I wound up in college. And that's where I met Joel.
So you guys met in college. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I was in classes. Joel was working for the university. And yeah, we just met through, I think, Ben Manley, who was instrumental to the production. Also, he was actually a mutual friend that introduced the two of us.
And this is your first film role, am I right?
Yes. Besides helping friends in college with like little film projects,
Yeah.
First, definitely first film role.
Has she seen it? Any of it?
She hasn't seen it yet. She sees the posters all around the house, the memorabilia, like all the production material, and marketing stuff. She sees and she knows it's Dad, but she hasn't seen the film yet. So eventually, yeah, she will see it.
Steve, when you said you like pretending, I was just like, we were pretending the whole time to make a movie. we were pretending to be filmmakers.
So Daniel, Joel and Stephen, they were sort of the newbies to this whole filmmaking process. You were kind of the veteran here. I think when you guys got together, you were and are an award-winning composer. You've got dozens of productions under your belt working on or composing, including, I think, some X-Men movie trailers and cool stuff like that. So how did you connect with these guys?
Yeah, in a way, like I wouldn't call myself a veteran, especially back then. I think, in fact, here's an example of why I wasn't a veteran. I was cold calling people, essentially. I was cold emailing people. And that's how I even found Joel. I saw his project, or I saw Norman on Kickstarter, and it was, I think it really struck a chord with like indie filmmaking at that time. I think it was like around 2014 maybe, or 2013 or
2014.
Whatever. Yeah. And like, you guys released that trailer, and I just thought it was a really cool thing. And it was a really cool thing. And I wasn't, let me think. I think I'd been in the industry for about 4 years at that point. I'd done maybe 2 features for a friend. And so this would have been my third. And it's still my third. So much time has passed, and it's still only my third. I moved into a lot of trailer music. I moved into a lot of ad music, because that's how you pay the bills. You don't pay the bills with stuff like Norman. You get onto like really interesting stories and a lot of experimentation and creativity, and then you get onto the next project with Norman, which is why it's so exciting. But yeah, the funny thing is, I was calculating it, and between the time I started Norman in 2014 and then all the way to February 2nd, I'd done 90 different projects in between that time. I'd gotten married with my best friend. I moved into a different house. Like, so much happened in between. And I think I could call myself a music industry veteran now. But at that time, like, I wanted to believe I was a veteran, but I wasn't. Like, there was so much more in between that happened. So I met Joel and Stephen from cold calling, just like any person starting out.
That's amazing. Okay, that's great. Let's talk about the film, and I'd like to kind of ask each of you, what do you sort of believe? We know what the plot is, but what do you believe the what are the themes we really wanted to explore, both from a story standpoint, an acting standpoint, music, and what sort of, we know what this film's about, but what's it really about, and what inspired you? Let's start with Joel.
For me, 100% it's about like living in the present. Like, the film obviously does it figuratively and literally. And it's just about, basically, you can't control the future. And it's about a character accepting certain problems and being able to take his life in steps day by day, and to be able to just that. It's like you can't control the future. Like today is where you live. Like you don't live in tomorrow or the next day or the next year. You live right now and today. And so just that concept just struck with me. And that to me is really what it's about. It's about just, it's accepting what you can do about things and what you can't. And just, I mean, honestly, it's like what we did making the movie. It was just like every step, like even realizing when you're working on a project for this long, I mean, there was no guarantees, literally no guarantees. I mean, the movie could have completely failed. No one's seen it, no distribution, nothing. It just, it could have been nothing. And so through all that, I mean, like, because it's always so easy for friends and family sometimes to get around you and be like really encouraging, like, oh man, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. But when you're the person driving it, essentially, it's really hard to believe that, and it's tough. And so you have to, at some point at the end of the day, accept like, I just enjoy making this film. Like I'm going to have to be happy with it no matter what. If it does well, if people like it, awesome. If people don't, like, I did my best. That's what I enjoyed it. Like, because at the end of the day, like as cool it is to see on a DVD or whatever it is, like it's a 2D image. So it's like, you have to be really excited about what you do. And I think the story kind of spilled into that, both making the film and what the film is really about.
Stephen, this has got to be a lot of pressure to carry an entire feature-length movie. I mean, a lot of times you're not even having, you don't have another actor in the room to sort of play off of. So how do you kind of approach this, and what did you want to do with this character?
Yeah, I mean, especially for your first go at any kind of filmmaking, it was pretty daunting. And I don't think I understood that when Joel approached me with the initial idea. Because I think I need to travel in time actually right now to remember everything. It was supposed to be a short film, and I think we talk about that at length in some of the bonus features. Maybe not, I don't remember. But initially, the scope was not as broad as it became. So I don't know. Like at the time, it was just Joel basically having to explain to me step by step who this person was, because there wasn't much material as far as like script goes and like understanding this character. So bringing Norman to life like was really more of just playing off of my life experience, and then having conversations with Joel one-on-one to get some more understanding as to the motivations behind, a lot of his decisions. And as you hopefully have seen, like he's a pretty mopey person. Starting out, there's a lot of turmoil going on in there, and it kind of rang a bell with where I was in life too. Just different circumstances that had befallen my actual life kind of helped create that character too. And so Norman and myself were both in a similar state of mind. I can say that.
Daniel, I want to ask you a little bit about the score. First of all, it's fantastic, and a couple of people have commented on it and have some questions about it we'll get to. But I did a Shazam on it, and your picture comes up, which is cool.
That's me.
Which is neat. But sort of curious about your influences with this music. What sort of guidance you got from Joel? Was there a certain style or example that he was looking for? And we had a question from Mike who said, who wants to know this. He also says the soundtrack was fantastic. He says
Thanks, Mike.
I think the building strings during the first portal moment were particularly fitting. And curious which soundtrack or scene moment you're particularly proud of. No, that's a couple of questions there, but let's start with your influences.
So it's that's always a hard question, because especially when you're on a project for so long, the instinct is always to look at what's going on around you. And I think at that time, Interstellar had just come out, and like I was like obsessed with that. And then yet you also want to be unique. You want to try to make your own thing because it's an entirely different story, you know. Man, I don't know. Like what I am thinking about is just all the voice messages that Joel and I traded, just like hours and hours and hours of voice messages, trying to nail down what like who the character was, you know, and like who Annie was as well, you know, a non-existent being, who they were and what their relationships were. So like anytime you're trying to write music to a film, you're really digging into the psychology of what it's about, like why we want to write a certain melody or pick a certain instrument. And so that's kind of how that's how this score came about. Norman is a very, like, I think of him as like a Baroque classical, like just old timey dude, you know, like I don't know why, but it must be his clothes. It must be the things that he enjoys. I'm sure he didn't just want to go back in time. I don't know how many people have watched it, but no spoilers. I didn't know if he wanted to go back in time simply for that situation that happened. I feel like he just wanted to as well, just to see what it was like. So a lot of the instruments and the sound were dictated by that, as well as what we were like capable of doing in an indie film. So one interesting thing is when I was trying to figure out what instrument to do, I picked the cello because I felt like the cello was very, very Norman. And the thing is, we didn't have like a huge budget for this. So we jumped on Skype. I jumped on Skype with a friend of mine that plays cello. And I was like, hey, you know, like, how do you play that little, how do you play this bit? Like, is it possible to play this little thing? And it's that bit that goes da 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 da, and you know, we played it, I recorded it, and I was like, okay, this is just gonna be a demo, you know, like we'll go ahead and figure this out later. And months pass, I'm like putting in this like Skype recording audio that's like really bad quality. It's a great performance, but it's bad quality. And I'm putting this throughout the score. I'm like, I'm gonna replace that at some point. I'm definitely gonna replace that. And it's like 75% of it is done, and it's still there. And that's what ended up in the score. Like, it's that raw, like, and you can justify that sort of thing, right? Like, at some point, I think Joel and I were like, yeah, it's like the rawness of Norman's emotions. It's it's like that wooden time machine he built. It's not quite there. You know, like it's not quite like Clayton, your background, like it's not quite that that time machine that's right behind you. It's that wooden, janky sounding wooden time machine. So, you know, a lot can dictate the types of music that we throw in there, especially in regards to character emotion, psychology, and the world around them.
I'm glad you brought up the time machine, because Robert had sort of a similar question that I had, and he says it strikes him that one of the big creative decisions that writers of time travel movies have to make is, how do you come up with what the machine is going to be? Is it going to be a DeLorean, a hot tub, a telephone box? So Joel, kind of walk us through how you know, the thought process behind what the machine was going to be.
Yeah, sure. The idea for it was always, number one, I wanted to make it feel like anyone could build it. As a kid, I'd take apart like remote control cars and build stuff out of boxes and duct tape and stuff. So I wanted to build like the Millennium Falcon of time machines, and by that I mean like the one where you have to smack, like you're not quite sure it's gonna work. And so like the idea of like even just making it like wood and stuff. A friend of mine who built all the props, and we used his house for like 3 years to film the movie off and on. I was pitching him that like, yeah, I want to be on this, and it'll be on like rollers, and you crank and it opens up, and I like the linear of it, you know, just like cables and stuff. I really love that. Like even if you think of like the start of Back to the Future, you know, just the little marbles falling, that kind of stuff. I like that, because it looked like something I could build, because I can't really build great stuff like that. But it just seemed like, how is this thing working? But I just thought that would be a unique approach and something different, because again, when you're making a low budget and you have no name actors. I'm a nobody. Everybody's basically a nobody, you know, as we were working on this, like no one has big credits where it's like, oh, wow, I have someone attached. I thought that was just another way to make Norman stand out as unique. It's not the same type of thing. Even when we were working with the portal effect and how like it would show up and what would be like, even the sounds, the original sound was like this Australian wind thing. I was like, and then we took a ping pong table and dragged it across like a stone floor and it would vibrate just right. And we used that. And my brother was like, well, I got all these like HD sound packs. I was like, no, I want this. And so we built that on that because it's like, I don't want it to sound like the typical electricity thing, you know, like it had to stand out. Like, I mean, what's the difference between watching Norman and watching, you know, $100 million one that maybe is done way better? It's like, maybe you'd see this because it just looks kind of like, how is that?
I would not
thing
have
working?
been in it,
you know? Yeah. But that, I mean, that was the approach. I really like that idea. And we actually, we built one version that was made out of styrofoam. We were going to like paint it and carve it and melt it. And then it like failed miserably and we just chucked in the garbage and then we built the second version. But that was the thought.
That kind of takes us into the making of this film. And it was a long process. My first question is, how in the world does a film like this get made? Where do you start? Where do you get the money? How do you convince friends, family, talented colleagues to join this effort, which was originally a short film, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just need to start.
Yeah, let me interrupt you. It's good leadership from Joel. No, seriously,
Thanks,
like, you know, it's like about, you know, having a vision and then finally, slowly but surely, you're like, hey, what do you think about this? Yeah, it's a good idea. What do you think about this? And that was, you know, it was 7, 8, 9 years of that. And it's, you know, it's still going. We're still doing this. He's still being such a great leader. But anyway, I'll pass it back to you, Joel.
Thanks, Dane. No, it's all that and more. No, it's really just like taking it one step at a time and doing it. I tell a lot of people, if there's something you really want to do, you should already be doing it or are already doing it. If you're not, I would argue, I don't think you actually really deep down want to do it. And I think that's something everyone has to really like find. Is it something you really want to do? Because people go, it's so easy to find another excuse to be like, oh, well, I only have like 15 minutes or 20 minutes to do it today. I'm waiting for like that 5-hour, you know, big stretch. I can just sit back and relax and write my script. No, it was like literally like writing a script on my phone on the bathroom sometime. Like, oh, I got an idea. I'd quickly jump out of the shower, write something. And then I have to go over to my mom's birthday party. I'm like, I can't script. So as soon as I get home, maybe it's 1 a.m. I'll be like, I'm so tired, but there's a little edit I want to do. And you do it right there. It's like, you got to commit to that suffering too, to get it done. I mean, again, especially with no budget, like I got tired of people that were really talented and knew what they were doing. I would ask for them for help and you'd get inputs and, oh, Joe, well, you should do it this way, or this is how you should do things. And I'm like, cool. What do I do next step? Who do I talk to? And then you wouldn't hear from them, or they say, well, just, you know, maybe this weekend I got something. I was just tired of waiting on those opportunities. I was like, it's like, I felt like people forced my hand to just have to make the movie myself, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, I can't, like, I would love to do it the better way that I see you are telling me to do it, or you think I should produce it this way, or get the budget first, but I can't. I don't know the connections. I don't know where to go, but I do know how to grab a camera, grab a friend, and film one journal shot. And that's how we did it. We just shot one.
That guy looks like an actor.
Yeah. I mean, with Steve, he would just keep his clothes in the back of his Jeep. He lived pretty close to where we'd film, and it would just be me, him, and Pecor, who had the house, and we would just film a little scene here, him waking up in bed or him walking down the basement. And because of that, and the reason why it was a short film is because we thought it was going to be a little tiny section of it. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because I'm a realist when it comes to stuff. Any classes I ever took about video and film, when people say, you know, write scripts and you're going to go shoot something, is they tell you write anything you want. And then everyone's sitting there going, well, how the crap am I going to film these spaceships? Like, it's your first film. So I get inspired by locations. And so I went over to my friend's house. In his house, I saw someone had a comment about the painting, the ship. All that is my friend's house. We just used his house. We didn't have lighting. We just had windows. We'd open them and then we'd film a scene. Like that was just his house, and that just became Norman's house. Even Stephen Burge, the look of Norman came from a photo he did from some play he was in, and he had glasses like that. I was like, oh, that's it. I like it. So it's just really like, once we got a few shots done and people saw it and realized, wow, this looks really good. It's like I was able to do more because people believed in what the project was. When no one had any clue it was going to be this big of an effort to get to where we had to, what we wanted to do. But I'm also thankful for that, because it would have been impossible to go, oh yeah, if I took a time machine and went, hey Joel, it's going to be 9 years. I'd be like, oh, never mind. See you guys. Like this is going to be crazy. But that's how it started.
Stephen, from an acting standpoint, I'm curious, since this did take a long time, did you find, you were learning or changing your approach to the character as time went on, sort of developing Norman differently, treating him differently? How did your approach kind of evolve as more time went on?
Yeah, it was so long ago, and part of it was our filming schedule was so sporadic, like few and far between did we all align, the stars align, and we all had a free weekend or few days that we could get together. Most of the development of the character took place through conversation. Like I said earlier, like Joel and I would sit down, and this was like as the script was evolving and becoming more and more of this expanded, Norman universe, I'll call it. I was able to harvest more information on who this guy is from Joel. And it, like, my fear as an actor was that my understanding of the character in the first scenes we filmed versus my understanding of the character in the last several scenes we filmed was pretty different. So like, I would love to have been able to sit down with a full script and say, okay, who is this person? Let me, put together, this character who I think can embody this person on paper, but that wasn't the case. So I had to develop with Norman. So it was just strange.
Mike wanted to know how many times you fell while filming all of those running through the forest, falling down the sand dune scenes. You had some physical moments.
And well, the sand dune scene, Joel was making me fall a lot. And we used like one of the takes, but I had mouthfuls and hand and hairfuls of sand for a few days. Like even after showering, I was like pulling sand out of me. How'd this get up there? The forest scene, Joel, I don't think I fell in the forest even with all the trees down and logs and all that.
You only fell because
I played football in high
you
school.
Rolling. That was just because I had you roll, and we have extra deleted scenes of him falling more and more.
Yeah, I did all my own stunts, no stand-in, and I'm happy to say there was no serious injury even while running through a forest in some really nice shoes.
Good, excellent. Joel, I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about the house where you shot all of this. You mentioned it's basically the house where your production designer lived, right?
Yeah.
That was his house. And for people who are watching, a production designer, correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of the person who's kind of responsible for the overall look of the film, right?
Honestly, I think so. I mean, based on what and that's where like I don't know, but that's what we called him. So because he produced the backpack, the time machine suit. It was his house. We would move things around. I know we put up a couple different like paintings from different rooms he had, but he had these old boats and sailboats and stuff there.
Yeah, but he basically couldn't change anything, or had to keep changing it back while you guys were shooting, right?
Yeah. He always joked that like, he was always interested in filmmaking, and he's like, I like lived on a set. Like we would always show up early in the morning, and then he would be there making coffee for us. He'd be like, what do you guys need? And we cleaned his entire basement up, and we'd have to shift things around because everything.
Oh, Jason, he's in the chat. He's
yeah. I mean, he just made it. But no, I mean, his house was already exactly what I like. I mean, like, Norman as a character really is like me, I like old records. I just like tinkering with things. And so I like that. So it naturally just kind of worked well for his house and how things were laid out and how the ships were there. And I just like utilized that. And we just took advantage of that in the script anywhere we could, even with his old watch. That was actually I think his great grandfather's actual watch. He was a conductor. And so he used it. And so I was like, sweet. And we actually recorded carefully the audio of it actually ticking for the movie, which was kind of scary because it's incredibly old. But
I think I used that in the score as well.
I was going to ask you
so.
that. I was going to ask you that. You hear ticking in the score, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge theme, you know, like, and it's not just the clock either. Like, you know, I'll grab this and just like this shows up in there, you know, and it's just any time you can sort of be rhythmic and like do things in the store that make you feel like it's part of the world. Like that's a good thing, I think.
Daniel, what stage was Norman in when you became involved? Are you seeing a rough cut? Are you seeing, you know, pieces? Probably not the finished product, but what stage do you get it in? And affect your process?
Very rough, very rough. I mean, honestly, I would have preferred to come in earlier, like when they were trying to go for the short. I really wouldn't have minded a few more years on the project. But it was, honestly, I don't know, because I have so many files on my computer that say Norman rough draft, you know, XYZ date, that it was just kind of scoring it on a rolling basis, trying to figure out, despite it being a rough draft, not much actually changed story wise. So there wasn't much more work to do even after Joel was like, oh, maybe we'll get rid of this. Maybe we'll take, replace the VO, the voiceover. And I think for most of the time I was scoring it, there was no color, of course. There was no VFX at all. Who was Annie? Annie was not, who was Annie?
Annie was like everyone. Annie was me. Annie was
that's right.
My sister-in-law, like my brother, my sister.
I mean,
everyone's voices.
Absolutely. Like sometimes you'd hear Joel in the background, just, you know, saying Annie's lines. And
I had moved, and I had already moved from, because I was in Virginia when we started the project. I moved down to Florida, and I remember Joel sending me sound bites of like all kinds of different things. And then he sent me some stuff from you. I was like, wow, that's different. That's like, that feels like the movie, you know, when things just like make sense. And I can't remember how long I had been down here in St. Pete at that time, but I was basically done with my production part of the work when you came on.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But you had ADR to do, didn't you? I think like music.
That might have been like, I think that was like 2015-ish. So yeah, I mean, because you started really towards the end of 20. It all blends together, but it was right towards the end. I mean, he was either finishing doing that or whatever. But there's only been a little bit of the music done at that point.
Yeah. What was the last thing? I think VFX was the last thing, right? It was like music was done, and then VFX. Oh, and then Jonah's sound.
Yeah, sound, and then the color work was very last.
Which was nuts because Jonah's like. He like, I don't know if you guys know this, but like literally everything was replaced, right? Like
every dialogue, single sound, everything.
Yeah, like, okay, somebody mentioned the train sounds, like that was added in, and you know, and like every single sound that you hear in this film was replaced. And it's like, I watch a lot of movies. This is like Hollywood level sound design. It's insane. Like once you really start to listen for it, because when you watch a film, you're immersed in the world so much, and you don't hear the dogs barking in the background. You don't hear the random, faucet dripping, dropping, like that's what Jonah did. And it took so long and so much effort for him to do it. It's pretty amazing, to be honest.
And Jonah, we should point out, is who, Joel?
He's my brother.
And
he did all the sound design and everything. Like what he did, I mean, we spent probably, I think it was about 45 to 50 days at his house doing the final mix. The rain scene when he opens the umbrella, I mean, every single footstep was hand placed and put in stereo and pan. So when it would plop in something, we had to navigate that all because you're navigating, okay, Daniel's music, it needs to be loud. We got to have room for like a boom here. So that means we got to take this away. We got to adjust this water drop. Every cough, sniff, jacket move, everything was completely replaced.
Yeah.
Everything. And I mean, I think he did such an awesome job, and we just had a blast kind of putting it together, because I like doing things spatially, and I shoot a lot of stuff where I'm expecting to hear things outside of the screen. And so that's really fun to work on. To me, even as an editor, because I edited this thing, is that like you get to have the sound off screen and go, okay, if that doesn't work, then that shot doesn't work. So it's like you got to get all those little things correct or as much as you can.
People don't realize that truly sound is 50% of your movie.
Yep. And I would say even more so. I mean, it's the most exciting thing for me making a movie, honestly. Like I love making the visuals, but it's like I almost love making the visuals so that I can add the sounds, because I love hearing the right sound, because that's what immerses me. Like it all has to work to immerse you, but that my favorite scenes in any movie is kind of like when a camera is just kind of slowly moving in on something and you hear the sounds and it feels 3D, and you just kind of forget for a second and you feel you're there.
Yeah, to be honest, I've worked on a lot of student films early on, and then of course a lot more indie films, and it's so that's when you realize that sound is the biggest thing. The first thing is story, and then it's sound, because this is why I always recommend, like sometimes I say, you know what, this scene doesn't even need music because it just needs sound, and that really fills it out. And then once they finally explore that is what fills it out, they realize it. They see that their film comes alive, you know?
That's great. Robert had a comment. He says, rather than a question, he said he really liked the role of the apple, how it drops in without explanation, and then you finally get it an hour later. He said that was a nice touch. And sort of on that note, I wanted to ask you about, I noticed along the way, you have some parallels that happen. There was a scene where Norman is on the ground and he turns to look at the watch in much the same way that the soldier turns to look at the apple in the beginning of the movie. And I'm just curious if that is, how much of that is sort of planned out, or how much of it is just sort of filmmaking serendipity along the way?
Since the movie was over a period of years, a lot was planned. A lot of the stuff that was not planned is more of the dialogue for Annie, where we had a baseline of what was there, and then we basically rewrote it all. I had a friend of mine come in and he rewrote everything for Annie's lines, because I didn't want it to sound like Norman. I knew my dialogue was not up to snuff, and I was like, it needs to be better. And he is incredible at that. And that's an important thing for filmmaking, is know what you absolutely suck at. Like, it's so important. People are terrified about that. But you got to know what you're bad at so that you can find someone who is good at that and fill that role, because that will make the film more polished. But that apple, it's so rewarding to have people say that about the apple, because that is so planned. And the reason for that is this: movies have a language. If you see a character on screen and he says, let's say he's up close and the camera moves in and he kind of goes like this and he goes, I've got an idea. And then it cuts, right? And suddenly they're there at the bank heist doing their idea. Audience viewers are not going, hey, wait a second, I didn't see him get in a car and drive over there. How did he get there? We know that happened, right? So there's a language that people have slowly learned, obviously, as films made, and there's new techniques that happen. But with the apple, the reason why I did that very intro with the apple is I wanted the audience to be like going, wait, what the heck was that? What was that for? I want them to, like, now they're engaged. Now they're going to be going, crap, I need to figure out what the heck that apple is about. So now they're going to spend a good while going, I need that to resolve. What does that mean? But then I was hoping people kind of slowly kind of forgot about it, so that when it does come around, it's like, oh, that's what it's for, There's a point, but that's also important because it's telling viewers, this is the kind of film it's going to be. It's going to be one that you're going to need to be engaged and like be looking for clues and maybe trying to remember stuff. And it's not going to maybe tell you everything. Like it will show it to you. And, we're trying to be between that point of too vague, but telling enough, so that, because I like having that smart viewership. Like, those are the kind of films I like, where you kind of go, oh, I bet that's coming around. Like, I don't want it to be too obvious. But by setting those ground rules, and I think it's worked pretty well, is that people go, they want to see a resolve of that. And that also makes sense because later in the film, when you see Annie and her discovery of kind of like the twist of what actually happened and what she knew, and also even Norman's watch on the back of it, the date. Yeah. If I didn't set that precedent at the start, you might kind of relax into the film a little bit more and not be as engaged, to be like, I got to actually work a little bit more on my own on this. And so that's very important. And it was tough to do. And I like those films, and maybe I like those maybe even more hardcore than some. So you have to go, am I pushing too much? Or am I, is this gonna be too vague? But from all the showings, it's fun seeing people group up afterwards going, so this is what happened. This, like, no, man, no, this happened. And then they, like, people get certain chunks, really early on. Some people get really late, and then some people in the middle. So, but that's what I liked. But it is very important, and it actually makes that's just how I want to do stuff, and I am planning that.
Coming off of the scene with the Civil War soldiers, I'm curious about how, and Stephen, I'd love to hear from you too on this, how you decided to sort of portray Norman sort of physically, the way he dresses. He's almost wears, with the suspenders, it's almost a throwback to the soldiers. He has the old watch. He likes the old pipes. He seems to be, even though we know he's from the future, he seems to be very much of the past. You seem to portray him in that way.
Yeah, I kind of took to that as something that I had in common with the character was, as technology advances and things get cooler and more convenient and quicker and faster, there's a romance to some of the older things that, are the foundation for everything that we experience today. And being able to appreciate that, I think, is something I had in common with the character. So yeah, in the state of mind he was in, and not to like spoil anything, but what the situation he found himself in and how depressed and out of it he became, it's just he held on to some of those things that he appreciated up until, it was almost the end. And I think, I have that same appreciation. He just saw that those things were valuable to the technology that he had seen advance, to the point of being able to, travel through time, and he still appreciated what was old.
It's almost as if, like, the thing that happened to Norman affected him so deeply that he just did his best to, like, want to turn back time and, like, any way he could. Like, maybe he used to dress normal. Maybe he dressed like future people. But then this event happens, and like, because isn't he, like, remember when he gets into the car, he's wearing is he wearing a collared shirt, or he's not wearing the clothes that he wears in the past, right?
If I may spoil something because I know Trent said, well, most people saw it here, but one of the biggest reasons for his love of the past is the fact that, like, you do find out, like, is not actually Norman. It's not who he is. Right. And that's one of the main things, is the fact is even the glasses, he doesn't need the glasses. His eyes are fine. It's all this, it's a personification of, I'm here, I'm a different person, I've escaped my reality, I'm a different, in a different place. And so it's, the reveal of when he's like, oh wait, that's not even his real name. What is his real name? It's never actually told. You don't actually know who this guy is, but it's meant to show that this guy, like, at the very end, when he looks back at his glasses, he's looking back at the character he left behind. That's not him. He's leaving it behind. He became kind of in love with it, and he kind of embraces at the end, but I think he embraces it as not Norman, but as who he really is. But that, there's lots of little things that you can see in the film, and if you catch it, but even when he sees his identity with the glasses, Norman is inspired to wear glasses by himself from a photo in the future of him wearing glasses. He doesn't even know it yet. So we tried to, like, tie all these little details, but I love old stuff. Like, I love vinyl records and I love old radios and stuff. Yet here I am using Skype and working with music people from across the country. And that's how we worked. I had my friend who we write with, we would do a Google Doc. And we do a shared Google Doc, and we didn't have any script software. We had notepads and things like that. So that came through to the film. And I think as who Norman is, it's like someone who it's like desperately trying to fight the fact that he has all this futuristic stuff. He loves old stuff, but he's still tied to it, and he has to have that responsibility to it at the end of it.
One of the things I really loved about the film was the way you move the camera. The camera is always doing something. It's always moving. It's so fluid and so poetic in the way that it moves the story along. And Amos Kim had a comment weighing in on saying the cinematography in the film was amazing. So many vibes throughout. My favorite scene was probably when Norman was crossing the street in the rain. Would love to find out what your favorite scenes are in the film and why.
My favorite would be is really the end wrap up. I'd say the last like 4 minutes of it. Because we did shoot that close to the end of filming, which would be, I guess, maybe at the end of like 2.5 years working on it at the time. And so I think just getting better and really feeling the sense of ending, but also trying to create like kind of a 2 climax kind of ending where you have kind of the adventure climax ends, but then you have the wrap up and the kind of revealed stuff. And I think just that, I don't know, like there was a mood in it that's what I really like. But I think shots of like the burning time machine, the journal scenes, it's going to be hard to ever do that again, I think, or to capture that feeling again. I don't think I'll ever work on a project that I love any more than this, because you get to work with your best friends, like in a small little house, in the morning, and we just shoot some scenes together. And those will always mean the most to me, doing those. But I think that wrap up end scene and putting on the glasses again, because it was really close to the very end of the filming. And, at that time we thought, oh man, we're so close. Almost 8 years left to go. But at that time, it was like, wow, we're kind of saying goodbye a little bit. And so I think it was that scene. And then the music, that's probably my favorite part, like just that wrap up with Daniel's music. And then hearing the credits when Daniel, we think he spent so long on the credits music, because we forgot. It was like, oh yeah, we got to have credits music.
Yeah.
And but he did like so many different versions of it, and oh my gosh, it was such a relief hearing it when he sent, because I was like, just give me a little taste. What are you working on? Like, no, I'm not ready. I'm just working on it. Yeah, it's not ready yet. And then he gave it to me. It was so perfect.
It was
I was like, oh, so good.
Yeah, it was like I forget how long it is, maybe like 5 minutes or so, but it was just this chunk of music that I sent to you, and it was kind of a journey. And I wish I could go back, like when I scored that ending scene when, spoiler alert, Annie stays behind. Like that's when I realized, I was telling Mike, but that's when I realized that this film is really about, it's not about anybody except for Norman and Annie. Like we always stick with them anyway, but I don't know, I just didn't see it. Like I thought this was about his parents. I thought this was about Jenny. I thought this was about so many other things, but it wasn't until that very scene, when I scored that very scene, that I realized I may have scored this entire thing wrong. Like I'm so sorry. No, but
another 5 years.
Yeah, right. But like, yeah, it was that moment where, she makes the greatest sacrifice for her friend, for her partner. That was my favorite scene, and then I think that led us into the credits, which. The intention behind the credits music was like, let's allow the audience to sit there and think about it. Just think about what just happened and sit with it. I didn't want it to be heroic. We didn't want it to be anything other than intimate and emotional. I recorded it right on this piano right here. It wasn't in a big studio like we did the other cues. But yeah.
Favorite scene, Steven?
It's tough. Like I think my favorite scenes are some that probably were either cut or just from a production standpoint. I like being outside, and so even though they're not as instrumental to like the full-on storyline and plot, I think some of my favorite scenes were just being outside with Joel and either a small or large crew. Just the camaraderie and everyone, banding together to make this thing happen. Joel's got ideas in his head. Let's all, come together and make them work. The the scene where everyone's in like the kind of abandoned car camp, where Norman's getting beat up and there's, you know, two parties fighting with each other. I'm trying to escape the whole thing. I think that was my favorite scene from a production standpoint, just because there were so many people there. We were all there to, you know, make this thing happen, and it was wonderfully orchestrated by Joel and his wife Joy. But the spirit, like the camaraderie and everyone, you know, sharing their time. No one was paid. Just everyone coming together and say, hey, let's make this happen because it's fun and we believe in this thing that Joel's doing. So stuff like that, I really look back fondly on. Yeah.
We haven't talked about Melissa Crotterfield. I think I pronounced her name right. Who plays Jenny, but I don't know how many people that saw the film realize that she's also the voice of Annie.
Yeah, and I believe, Steve, I think Melissa was a friend of yours, right? Like, I think you were the one who referred. Yeah,
we had done some productions together.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she was like perfect from the get go. Like Steve nailed it. Like, I need to find someone, and we really wanted to find someone that just it was a small part for her Jenny role, but like it needed to be just like really good that you wanted to kind of like want more of her, and that was the point, because the idea about the scene when they kind of say goodbye to each other, and Norman's kind of frustrated is, and that came from something personal for me, is that it's the decision that you have to do the right thing right at the moment life could actually be easy or a little bit better. He finally had a connection with someone that it was just because he's been stuck in this house for so long, but it's just like I could just let go for a minute and I could connect with someone because I've been torturing myself for so long, but he knows he's got to do the right thing, or so he thinks, you know, with fixing the future or whatever. But I just wanted that scene to be like memorable with her. And I think she did such a fantastic job. But one of the things we were going to do is, one of my producers had mentioned saying, well, we could get a legit actor and to do the voice of Annie. Like, we could just hire someone, because I mean, essentially that would be like a 6-hour record session for someone, you know, with a name, and bam, that would be helpful. So we tossed that idea around for a little while, because it's like, wow, that could be kind of cool. But after a while, I'm just like, I don't really care. I thought her voice was just fantastic, and it had the qualities that I wanted with Annie to be like this best friend sound. And I think she nailed it, and we had a blast working with it. And so, you know, we have our ideas of how that all goes down, but I think she was such a good friend. Melissa's just incredible. She always would help anytime we had a chance to do it and come back and record or do this or do the voiceover. And like, that's it. Annie is Melissa. Like, she really is. That's who she is.
But you didn't intend going into this to have Annie's voice be the same as Jenny's voice.
No.
Yeah. Because if you'll allow me my own headcanon, it's, you know, later on, Norman and Jenny get together and he somehow records or synthesizes her voice, and then of course makes it into this new AI system. Anyway, there you go.
That's the same on our side. We always thought like Norman probably would still be tinkering with things, you know. He'd be like, oh, I'm not doing Time Machine, but maybe he tinkers around with it. So gotcha. There may or may not be ideas.
Yeah, more on that in Norman 2.
No, Jason, no.
We're kind of running short on time here. We'll start to wrap this up, but I was just curious, you know, did you ever think this was going to get done? Did you, you know, this was a long haul. What was the hardest thing about this for all of you?
Honestly, I think the hardest thing was trying not to annoy everyone, basically. I always knew it was going to be done. It's just who I am. It's going to be done one way or the other. How good it's going to be, I don't know, because I was just going for the best I could. I had done a lot of wedding videos and filming and stuff like that, and shorts. And so, like, to make a movie, it's like, to be able to make a movie, you have to have already worked on a movie to make a movie. So it's kind of like, well, crap. Well, this is my first thing, so I got to do everything I can. And also, you have all the weight of everyone else on your shoulders. You know, you have Steven's actions, you have Daniel's music, my brother's audio design, years of work, people hearing about it for so long. I wanted it to be good. I wanted them to be proud of it too. So it's like, if I spent all this time and it's just this piece of crap and I didn't care about it and the fonts don't look good, it's like, what was the use? Like I should have just not even done it. So when I started, I knew I was going to end it. But I think the toughest part is really kind of like the morale. Like I just had to keep the morale up. There was a period of time where I got out of it for, I'd say maybe 5 or 6 months. It was when Steve moved to Florida. He got a job and he moved out of our town, and we had to plan a scene. And so we booked flights, and we had it planned for about almost 6 months, and we were building props. Well, we built all the props. The time machine was in our house. We looked like we had a meth lab going on in our house. I remember a pizza guy showed up and was like, what the heck's going on? Because we had it in pieces. And but we finished everything. So then we were just waiting. Like there was nothing to do for about 5 months. And I'd gotten out of it so much that when we started shooting again, it was so difficult and like so soul crushing, because I knew how much was left, that like my wife saw it and she said, don't get out of it again. You got to stay in it until the end. Like always be working on something. Just don't get out of that mindset till you're done, because it was so difficult to be like, oh my gosh, once you realized how much is left, what you have to do, how many people you have to talk to beg, to ask, to get another edit, to say, guys, the visual effects is not up to snuff. Can we do it again? Because there was no one else doing that. You know, I'm so thankful for all the help, but at the end of the day, it really came down to me going, all right, how's things coming? Do you guys have a weekend we can work on this? Or, hey, Daniel, what's going on? You know, he's like, hey, yeah, I'm going to try to fit in something this, you know. So it's just keeping that train moving. It's all I have. This is who I am for the last, 9-10 years. This is literally, I've been Norman for 10 years to get it done. It was exhausting, but it's like, you just got to stay in it. And I think I chained myself to it. And I think that was really good, because it was going to get done one way or the other.
All right. So what's next for the three of you? Are you, Joel, are you moving to Hollywood? For you? Daniel's already on the West Coast.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, my hope, people ask me that. They're like, hey, like, oh man, you just, what do you get into work on? I'm like, I don't want to just work on anything. Honestly, I didn't get into the filmmaking for that. I want to be able to work on specific projects, and that's just the way I'm going to do it, because that's the only thing that I actually glean fun out of it, because it's a lot of work. I get a lot of offers to work on other people's projects and stuff like that. I don't want to just work on anybody's projects. Like I want to work on things that I'm really excited about. And so I've been working on some scripts, and we have some ideas for things that I really want to do. And so I'm hoping with this, it opens the door to be able to get a decent budget to be able to do the next thing. But it's not just to produce content. I don't, that bores me. Like, I don't want to just create content. Like someone else can do that. If there's other people that just love working to work in the industry, that's wonderful. I can't do that. Like, it's not like, I'm not saying my stuff is the best. It's just more of the way when I want to work on it. It's like, I just want to work on stuff I'm really excited about. So that's what I want to do. So I'm hoping, we'd have the opportunity to be like, hey, we got 1.5 years and we have some budget to make a film. That would be wonderful to say, here you go, Daniel, here's your money. Like, you don't have to suffer through back and forth and stuff. We can just focus on something. Same with my brother, and, rent a hotel for people to stay. Steven just slept on our couch like a zillion times.
Yep.
But yeah, that's my plan. I like being creative, but I made Norman because I wanted to make it in a very specific way. I didn't get everything I wanted, and that's not the point. It's just I got the way I wanted to make a film. I didn't want people telling me I can't do the close-up shots, or I can't do this type of shot or whatever. I was like, I want to go do it. So I'm just going to go do it. I'm grabbing my camera. I can go move the table right now and go do it. Like, no one was telling me that. And that's what makes me excited about filmmaking. So not just being in the business, but making something that I want to do.
Steven, Daniel, what's next for you guys?
Yeah. Let me write on Joel there. I part of this is a thank you, but it's also part of what I want to do next. I really appreciate everyone here watching Norman and being here, because if you're here, then you've got some value out of Norman, and that's the kind of thing I like working on, things that can sort of just bring value to people and like really change the way people think, or just simply entertain them. I work just to work, but I also love doing the creative stuff. Like I just any moment I can tell a story in any way, whether it's with words or like, here or with music, that's the kind of thing I love doing. So yeah, I mean, I really appreciate everyone here watching, Norman, and taking the time to hear us talk, because like we really should be thanking you guys, and Clayton, thanks to you, and Trent, thanks to you. We're we're the entertainers here. Like we're here for you, you know. So yeah, that's my thing. Steven, what you got?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Joel to send me a text.
Yeah,
Say, this is what's
The
next.
script.
Yeah,
Norman too, 10 years later.
a full script. Hopefully it's a thicker script with some more content to start. But yeah, like I think early on in my career, when I decided that, you know, I wanted to pursue acting, I kind of made the decision that real world experience is beneficial to any character that I'm going to portray. And that led me down so many different paths of just different trades and different things that, you know, I find interesting. I want to learn more about. And so right now I'm not as heavily involved with theater or acting, but I'm studying about HVAC and refrigeration and delving into that world. I'm doing home remodeling, but I'm always open to new ideas and new things, and hopefully more characters to, you know, embody in the future.
You know, that's where Norman 2 is going to start, right?
Yeah.
Norman, the HVAC worker.
Yeah.
Now that I can actually get behind, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty interested in that. We'll have a meeting after this.
All three of you deserve a tremendous amount of respect for what you pulled off. Filmmaking, what little I know about it, is not easy at all. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And I actually ran across a quote I'll close with here from Danny Boyle, who of course directed 28 Days Later and Slumdog Millionaire. But he said, to be a filmmaker, you have to be psychotic in your desire to do something. People always like the easy route. You have to push very hard to get something unusual, something different. And I certainly think you guys did that. So congratulations.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Appreciate it.